The Sustainable Voice, bringing you big successes from small places worldwide.
Welcome back to Sustainable Voice. This is Ashish. How are you? I got a really special guest today. Somebody who we're going to be pretty much be off script by about the first 30 seconds. She's one of the smartest people I know, but don't tell her I said that. She has an Appalachian cloud coming out of her mouth for those of you that are watching right now. Dr. Jill Schiefelbein, say hi to the group here, Jill.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
So before we jump in, as you guys have been doing, we've been actually seeing some record growth on our listener base and viewership and whatnot, which is fantastic. Please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. Make sure you get notified whenever we say something crazy. I want you to be part of the conversation. Remember, we're here to talk about critical thought. We want you guys to come away with new ideas, have critical thought. Today, we're going to take a different spin. So Jill is an author. She's a doctor, PhD, and she is somebody who I look up to just because of the fact that she's got so much inside knowledge. We met, pre-pandemic, probably it's going on almost 8 years now. I won't hold it against her that she went to Arizona State University. So,
I know, rival schools. Who knew? We were crossing paths before we were crossing paths.
I know. You could have gone to Arizona, but no, not everybody can be perfect. It's okay.
Yeah,
So, Jill, we're going to be talking. I know there's a lot of talk about AI. We just did a presentation yesterday on the catastrophization of AI, building on a video that Scott Galloway had talked about. Really something that was quite insightful. But you added just a ton of insight yesterday, and you added a lot of different things. So we want to kind of bring it to the travel business because you've been a friend of the travel business for as long as I can remember. Not only are you a client, but what's a side-scrolling line? I'm not only just the president, I'm a client too.
Yes.
So you've been a client as well, but I want to just take a second to talk about this. If something is AI powered, what does that mean to you?
Well, what does it mean to me versus what does it mean to everyone else right now are two different things. Most people think now you hear AI powered, you're immediately assigning it to generative AI or AI autonomous agents that are acting on your behalf. And the reality is the term artificial intelligence was actually coined in 1956. And before that, we were talking about it as synthetic intelligence or machine intelligence. So the idea of AI has been around a very long time. The class of AI that we are in now, this generative AI, really combines all of the precursors that came before it. So let me just give you a vocabulary lesson here because the show's about learning and gaining insight. So now you'll have the jargon to do it. You start with ML, which is short for machine learning. This is how machines start to learn. And there are different ways that machines can learn. Machines can learn in a supervised way, where meaning you're feeding it data and then it's matching it and you keep training it until it matches it. So here is a picture of a cat. Does it recognize a cat? Sidebar. This happens with us, Ashish, but have you ever seen the show Silicon Valley on HBO?
Yes.
Do you remember the episode when he created the app called Seafood? And basically this app did learning. And what it was trying to do was allow users to take a picture of a food and to identify what the food is. He was trying to train the machine. But he basically only got it to train it on hot dog versus cheeseburger, which wasn't commercially viable. But then there's certain body part that might look like a hot dog. So it became very useful in recognizing illicit content. So unintended consequences of that machine learning.
We have talked about unintended consequences on several different episodes. This is the first time it's been used for an appendage. I'm just going to say that.
You know what? I am here to surprise and delight.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
But that's machine learning, right? Where you have a clear data set. And then there's unsupervised learning, which starts to get a little more interesting, where you are giving this machine a ton of data and you're asking it to come up with patterns and learn and make something out of gobbledygook, right? Or things that you don't have time to process. Those were base, very early on. We're talking in the late 1900s. I say late 1900s now because, I'm from the 1900s and we can do that. But from the
my daughter says I was born in 1936. For the record, I wasn't, but she said I was born there.
That's amazing.
Yes.
So that's machine learning. Now you advance that. Once we got a grasp on that, we advanced it to deep learning or neural networks. And the idea of this is it kind of mimics a human brain where you have all these nodes and synapses and things are collecting thoughts. So it's not just here's image, is cat. It's cat with the saucer of milk, with food, chased by a dog. It's all these contextual things around it that different areas of a brain can connect different experiences to. So it gets a lot bigger and more vast. Now you combine machine learning and deep learning, you get LLMs, the large language models that generative AI are based on, and how we as humans interact with these models is because of NLP, which stands for natural language processing, which allows the machine to interact with a human in the style that a human communicates. So now you don't have to be a programmer typing in code to get AI to work for you, which you did decades ago. Now you can speak, you can type in human communicative style sentences and get the results you need. So it's all those things together that make up generative AI. And when most people are saying AI today, that's what they mean. And don't even get me started on vision AI and robotics. It's a whole
well, but this is something, because right about now, I'm pretty sure that cloud behind your head is what's happening to a couple of different people. It's a brain. It's kind of like, like you're going to see a short circuit. But I want to tell everybody, because you and I have worked together in several different facets. We've traveled together. You dislocated my shoulder, relocated my shoulder. For those you don't know, Jill's basically my work wife. And don't get us together in a room where we're other people. We will embarrass everybody.
Pretty much.
We'll be the two immature ones in the room, guaranteed. So one of the things I want to just stress here to our listeners, you're listening to all these different acronyms Jill's talking about. I want to just bring it back to one point. You're already using this stuff. Mm-hmm. You're already using all of this. It's not something you need to think, well, you're already using it. You don't believe me? Ask Siri. You just start there.
In a search in Google, have your inbox being sorted, spam filters, fraud alerts, all of these things are uses of AI, your backup camera in your car. We've been systematically desensitized to various uses of AI for decades upon decades upon decades. But again, the conversation now on is AI taking over the world. They're talking about generative AI and the autonomous agents that can be spawned from generative AI.
Well, and I want to bring this up because, you've seen this. Every single brand, from an airline to hotels, travel companies, all have an AI strategy, right? Some sort of AI strategy. And some of them are just horrible. Oh, yeah. There's an airline that you and I love. We fly them a lot. You pull a plane for them every year. Jill, by the way, Dr. Schiefelbein so Dr. Schiefelbein, for those who know, she is a cancer survivor as well, which I think is absolutely incredible. That's one of the things that just drew me into her, is the fact that she is she's as tough as nails, by the way. Don't let the looks fool you. She's as tough as nails. But their AI agent, it's not real AI. It's basically a text bot. I want to talk about this because the hotels in Vegas do the same thing. And let's teach the people how you know what's real and what's a rebrand. Let's teach the people. What are some telltale signs?
Well, let me break that down what you said first, because here's a big difference in when you interact with a chat bot. It is a type of artificial intelligence, but it is a logic-based type of artificial intelligence. So if you remember those choose your own adventure books that we had in the 80s and 90s, you'd read a page and it's like, do you do A, B, or C?
We're old.
10, 25, or 36, whatever it may be. You choose your own adventure. It's like a decision tree. Like if yes here, then go here. If no, go to this other path. That's what logic-based AI is. And so Delta's texting service, which kills me because one, I'm coming from the same number as a top tier flyer in your network. I still have to go through 5 different steps before I can actually get to a human, instead of as soon as I log in and authenticate my account, you should be giving me to a human, because your top tier flyers aren't texting in about something they can find on a website. It's a complicated problem. And so this is where logic-based AI systems fail. And you see this in hotels. You see it in a lot of different places in the travel industry, where if you're requesting something that's even slightly out of the norm, and let's be honest, if you're listening to this, you are probably a seasoned traveler in some way, shape, or form. So you know how to solve the normal problems. You don't need a bot to frustrate you when you're already experiencing a problem that you know how to solve.
That's right.
So companies are putting these systems in place. They've been doing it for years. And now they're, when you white label something, you're putting someone else's brand on top of an existing product. People are like, oh, I have AI. We have AI. We're doing AI. You're calling basic software programming AI, and you're not actually doing anything generative behind it. So what's happening now is you'll see a lot of companies labeling things as AI when Yes. Is it technically artificial intelligence? Yes, it is. Is it the type of generative AI that we typically think of when we hear AI right now? No, it's not.
Well, and part of this is because we've seen this. So there's hotels, and the telltale sign I see is you ask something, as you said, you ask something out of the norm, and it's like it short circuits.
Yeah.
It just
Like,
stops. But
do
the telltale.
not collect
Yeah,
$200. You are not.
that's right. Yeah, take that stupid top hat off and wait. One of the telltale signs is press 1 for this, press 0 for this, press 2 for this. It's still binary. And one of the things that you and I have talked about, and you and I were sitting in old Cairo in Egypt, walking this cobblestone path in 2021, me with my arm half working, should have been in a sling, but wasn't in a sling. And we're walking through and we started thinking these things up. And one of the things was that the AI is a moving target. It's not any one thing. It's constant. We were presenting to a body yesterday, and you and I both said that we're not thinking big enough. You said something about the end in mind, which I'm going to come back to in a second. But it's about not thinking big enough. But it is very much this rebrand versus realize. And there's a problem with rebranding. And what I mean by this is I worked for a financial firm before I worked in this industry. And our website at the time was getting over 1 billion hits a day. And IBM couldn't build a mainframe fast enough to keep our servers running. They kept inventing it. Our fab was a 4-story building. It basically was a data center before there was a data center, in essence. Things that I noticed right away, and it's something that's plaguing air traffic control right now. All this talk about 1 billion hits a day, we had $1 trillion under assets. It was a large company, a Fortune 500 business. When we actually went into the actual trading platform, it was a DOS-based platform, and this was at 1999, 2000. They were using, forget Windows, forget Linux. They were still in the 80s in terms of the platform, and they had not migrated out because it just gotten too big. So let's talk about that. When we talk about rebranding, is there legacy involved? Is there a legacy system involved that keeps somebody from thinking beyond this? Or what holds them back from trying to become more innovative?
I think there's two things. There's the physical and the mental, right? So to address the physical first, because that's exactly what you're talking about, it's within your organization, within your company, what is your existing tech stack, your technology stack? What is that made of? And are you beholden to that? Listen, I am unapologetically not a fan of Microsoft, right? I know they came out the gate, they did all these things. Listen, Microsoft Word is still superior to the other word processing, PowerPoint, etc. Not saying it's not good, but in terms of what they tend to do, because they are so enmeshed within most large enterprise, is they will do just enough to keep the customer there, knowing that they can put out crap because the cost of changing out of that system is too high. So, for example, Copilot, for a while, it went on the rise pretty quick, and then it plateaued out and hasn't gotten better in a really long time. You know why? Because, we have to keep people on through the hype and then let them ride it out. Same as Microsoft Teams. Same thing happened after Zoom took their big bump. Microsoft Teams is like, we better get on board and make sure we don't lose people because this is a critical issue. Teams has plateaued yet again, right? And this is what happens with sometimes these big legacy systems, and it's really constraining. Now, creativity can thrive in constraint, mind you, but it's really constraining. Now, in fairness, if you have Microsoft Enterprise and Copilot on an enterprise level, you can have some really good lockdown security measures. So I'm not dissing it completely. There are benefits to it, but are you getting the most advanced products that you could be using or the most advanced processes? No, you're not. At the same time, you have to weigh out security. So again, there's your physical infrastructure, right? Your technology infrastructure. Sometimes you don't have machines that are capable of doing things. Sometimes maybe you want to build an autonomous agent that takes actions on your behalf, but because you're savvy, you don't want that running on your existing system. You want to create a separate isolated system in case anything happens, right? Those things, for those of you ahead of the game, you understood that. For those of you not, don't worry about what I just said. With the mental place though, and here's the big thing, the mental space is really thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm behind. Oh my gosh, I need to keep up or do something. Oh my gosh, I have to label something AI or do something AI or I'm going to be laughed at. The reality is, you've got to get to know your processes, your SOPs, your standard operating procedures, and all of that well before you slap AI on top of it. Because if you just throw an AI solution in an existing tech stack without really consequential thinking, about what change it's actually going to serve in your organization, you're literally putting a bandage on something and then jumping right into a swimming pool. That thing is going to fall off quick.
Well, I use yesterday's presentation end in mind, because one of the things that I want to bring up here, and I'm going to come back to something that's relevant right now, is there's so many questions. You said the mental and the physical. That's absolutely right. But the end in mind is, I think, I find myself saying that more often. We're on the cutting edge of some of the stuff we're doing. And we talked about in the past on your podcast, which, by the way, we'll give a free plug to your podcast. Jill, go ahead. What's your podcast called again?
Humanized automation.
There you go. So for that, make sure you tag Dynamic Jill. Make sure you follow the Humanized Automation. You got to listen to her podcast. She has some cool things. And the best episode that she's ever had is when I was on. Just
obviously.
kidding. Just
obvious.
Obvi. So I find myself, and I found you and I spent a lot of time talking about the end in mind yesterday. I was not shocked, but I was surprised how much of the conversation was there. And I started thinking about it after we were done, and I started understanding that it has become a more common problem than we think in terms of this. So can you share with our audience end in mind? What do you mean?
Yeah. Don't be short-sighted when it comes to AI. AI is not how can this, help you write emails faster? Yes, it can absolutely do that. But when you're thinking about how you want to do this strategically in your business, you need to think, what is the ideal end state? What is the ideal end state? And then you need to map every single step it's going to take to get to that end state. Now, hack, you can ask AI, this is the end state I want to achieve. Give me some timelines, deliverables, and measurables over the next, I have a 12-month window that I need to achieve it. And it'll help you chart that out. Like, that's an easy prompt to use. But you have to have that end state, that ideal end state. And it can be a big, hairy, audacious end state, right? It doesn't have to be something that's necessarily achievable, but you need to get those metrics. You do need
and the bigger, the better. The bigger, the better.
In reality, right? But let's say I want to build a company that has an asset of an assessment that is a saleable asset, and I want that to be valued at $10 million when I exit. What do I need to do to get there in a 3-year time frame, right? Starting from nothing, right? Or if you're starting from something, which most of you are, say, this is what I'm starting with. Here is like the big desired end state. Let's map these things out. What that does is it allows you to look at what you need to do. Now, is it 100% perfect, right? No, it's going to give you an outline and a thought pattern and a brainstorming partner, right? What it gives you, though, is this outlay where you then decide, is this something I'm willing to do? Is this something I am able to achieve? Now, don't sell yourself short on that. No negative thinking or imposter syndrome there, but is it a realistic, possible thing to achieve? Then you can calibrate your expectations from there. But what I find is most people don't think big enough. Right. Most people stay safe. And there is no harm in staying safe, but I will say there is harm in never allowing yourself to think bigger, because that's where you get more innovation, creativity, and ideas.
It feeds in perfectly, because we talked about this on your podcast as well. When we talked about our new project, it's a big, hard, hairy, audacious end state. I mean, we thought really big. We're redefining everything, but we talked about there's guardrails. We have guardrails where this works within a closed environment. We're still building it. We ran into a couple of different issues, but it doesn't stop us. We're still pushing forward. We're writing our own code. And we actually ran into a problem that was something I didn't foresee. It's a good problem. It's intellectual property law, patent law. There is no precedent on patent law. So I could spend a boatload of money on getting the patent done, but enforcing it's going to cost even more money. So we're trying to find ways around that. It's a good problem to have. It means you've stumbled upon something that's really quite amazing. I was saying this to just one of my colleagues here, that somebody said it's about being more efficient. No, it's not just that. It's productivity, it's efficiency, it's dreaming, it's scaling, it's everything.
Serving your customers better and giving yourself time to be more human and do the human things, guys.
Absolutely right. And so this is what dawned on me, because you and I are both top tier flyers with Delta. I gravitated towards air traffic control. There is all sorts of chatter, which is not new, about the antiquated air traffic control system that the world uses. It is rooted into the 60s. It's not even the 80s. It is very old. And at any moment, if something catastrophic does break, there's no repair. We saw what this looked like when the CrowdStrike failure happened. You had airlines grounded for weeks. You literally got the playbook on how to weaponize the entire air traffic control system, not just here in the US, but anywhere in the world. It could be weaponized. And there's been so much talk about, well, we have to replace it. It's literally everybody standing in the room saying, somebody do something, but nobody actually knows what that something is. They don't have an end state in mind. Would you agree with that, or what would you say to that?
I think when you have people that are continually trained on one system and one system only, and there is an infrastructure in place that does not reward experimentation and discovery, you're setting yourself up for failure. And this is why one of the most very commonly cited case studies of organizational culture in, the tech bubble was Google. Every week, 20% of your time is to play, is to explore, is to try things, is to fail. This has been cited hundreds, thousands of times in different books since they came out with it in, the late 90s, early 2000s. And the idea is you need that time. And when your job is literally, and this isn't all air traffic controls, but it's like you press this button for option A, you press this button for option B, you press this option for option C, and your human judgment needs to tell you, do you need to press A, B, or C? You're not giving ways to think, how could this system be more efficient?
Right.
How could we move past this and let that human use their judgment on more critical things or outlier cases?
That's right. No, that's 100% right. It's not just even that, even healthcare.
Oh, goodness.
Same thing. It is a pendulum swinging. I did my senior thesis on global healthcare reform in college. I studied every healthcare system in the universe, in the world. Obviously, this was in a different realm, but the answers still hold true. It was the direct correlation to non-coalition governments, right? So more than two dominant parties, those countries seem to have a more functional healthcare system versus countries that have two dominant parties and a pendulum swinging left or right. So this isn't a US thing. This is a worldwide issue. But again, same thing. I don't believe anybody actually has an end state in mind on how to fix it. And I'll prove it to you. I actually went to a county commissioner here that was, ignorant would be a compliment, but basically I was explaining to him that there's a direct correlation to reducing healthcare costs or creating jobs. And I wasn't asking him to cover the whole healthcare bill. I was asking him to just simply, we can talk about catastrophic care. Just take, that if they're able to cover one part, the employer can cover the other part. And we got into a pretty contentious debate. And I had facts on my side. I was showing him numbers, facts, everything else. I even went so far as to basically memorize my entire P&L and say, this is how much this is on my profit loss statement. Mm-hmm. This is how much this equates to. This is how many jobs I can create if you take this number off. Mm-hmm. All he could come back to was, we're against socialized medicine. That's not what I was asking for. But again, I don't believe anybody, and I'm not railing on politicians, not this time, but it is very much about this lack of end state, because that is something that literally, if you're able to use generative AI, you can actually build something that could help fix this. You can even try to model it to see where it dies. So what would you say to those two things? Let's say there was a czar of the global healthcare system and there was a czar of the global air traffic control system. If you could do two things and only two things for each one, what are the two things that you would do?
I'd only be two things. So I'm not going to answer your question directly. Sorry, not going to do it.
Come on.
What's a good work wife here for? But here's what I will say is, let's take healthcare, right? Because air traffic control, everyone may or may not understand. Healthcare, we all understand, right? Yep. So when it comes to healthcare, what is the ideal end state has two different answers depending on if you're a patient or you're a corporation. Because what's happening in healthcare in the US, it's always profit over patient, almost 100% of the time. And even when doctors start out not wanting that to be the case because of the system that we have, it has to become that case for them to stay in business.
Right.
And that's messed up beyond messed up. For example, I don't know about other countries in as much detail on the digital front, but why in the US is there not one digital repository for health records where you can choose to opt in to have all of your stuff in one place so you can have the best continuity of care no matter where you need to get seen? If I am traveling to visit you down in Florida and I have an emergency and need to go to the hospital, there should be no question of all the different things that are pertinent to my treatment of care. But that's a very basic, simple thing that could be achieved, but we're not even there yet. So what we see in this AI space right now with the efficiencies that could be gained, heck, we've seen this in the digital space for a very long time. The efficiencies that could be gained are not being gained. And in my perspective and with my knowledge, which is not all encompassing on this subject, it's because of a couple of reasons. And you can extrapolate this into your own business, no matter what industry you're in. It's either not having not only an end goal in mind, an ideal state in mind, if you will, but it's also believing, either not having the know-how and not being willing to take the risk to go get it and develop the time to go get it. And so a lot of people will say back to that, well, there's just not time and resources because of how the system is set up. And in healthcare, unfortunately, in this country especially, that is the case in many situations. However, within other industries and business, are you not willing to not only take that risk, have some trade-offs where you have short-term pains for long-term gains? And a lot of business owners are in a place where you mentally have this block over, no, I will not take this short-term pain. I have a book coming out in September. Writing that book
Let's talk about that book, by the way.
But it's a very long process, and it takes time away from developing the business, from client sourcing, and from a lot of other activities that you do to develop a business. It is not a safe bet, but I believe the long-term payoff over that is going to be okay. And I'm not in the best financial position right now to be taking these bigger risks, but it's ultimately that belief in self and the belief in knowledge in what you're doing that the payoff will come in the long run.
Right.
So you have to be uncomfortable, or you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
100%. One of the things, again, drawing a correlation to non-coalition governments, right? This is simply from that standpoint of you could literally use all sorts of tools to be able to scale this out, to model this out, to show, okay, at what point does this die? Where does this road end? What happens? Okay. And it's like storytelling, right? Okay, so this has happened. What happens next? And next, and next, and next, and next. And you can literally scale this out, and you can basically role play this out. We do it all the time. When you start projecting your business out, you start projecting it out 5 years, 10 years. Okay, we talked about this yesterday. If you have a valuation that a stupid number that you want to hit, that if you hit this number, you'd sell your business, right? And it's some crazy number, whatever it is, right? And it doesn't mean you're going to sell your business, but it gives you okay, this is what I have to do to get here, right? As you said, take it from 0 to 10 million. Same thing, right? We have a healthcare system. Okay, we're going to have how many more users are we going to have over the next 5 years? What's the average cost for care here? What happens here? How is Medicare going to be funded here? How is Medicaid? What would
happen if a mandatory wellness was every year and a mandatory mental wellness was every year?
Sure.
What are the cascading consequences of that payout? I mean,
right. And what's really cool is that you go down rabbit holes. You're supposed to go down these rabbit holes to be able to start discovering more and more and more. And that's the whole point. But let's talk about the flip side a little bit. But before I do want to talk about your book, because this is not your first book, but this one is going to be pretty consequential. So you have been an author for a long time. When you and I met, I loved your previous book, but this one has a different feel to it. Can we talk about this book a bit? Because it's coming out pretty soon.
Yeah, it makes me want to vomit. That's the difference. Which when something's making you nauseous, it means it's on the right path, and you should probably do the scary thing for the most part.
Yeah.
This book.
Hey, by the way, for the record, I actually threw her off a cliff in Peru with a zip line. So I made her do the scary thing. I watched her do it. Don't worry. She's as tough as nails.
That was fine. The scarier thing was literally hanging off by one single peg and hoping my foot didn't slip. We were trying to take an asinine picture. I mean, Darwin Awards at the finest, but.
Oh yeah, that was great. We had basically both of us there. Yeah. We were sharing one metal rebar peg and holding onto the other. We were cabled in and weren't sure if the cable was going to hold. And if one of us slipped, I was looking for Sylvester Stallone.
Here's the thing though, like a great analogy was a Via Ferrata. For those of you wondering what crazy stuff are they into, you have to trust the equipment, right? And this is the same thing with the technology. You have to trust the equipment, but what's happening and why this book and why now, all my other books have been on human communication, business communication, psychology, persuasion, that type of thing. And I'm proud of those. And that's my lens and background, which I think makes me different than a lot of people who talk about AI, because I actually know the human psychology, the neuroscience, the communicative patterns that we have as human beings when we're interacting with technology. But what's happening is we're in this time now where people aren't trusting the equipment, so to speak, right? To bring that analogy back in. So this book is called Artificial Anxiety, and it is really a 3-part book. The first part is about understanding the psychology behind why you're feeling what you're feeling. And if you're not feeling these things, why the people you lead are feeling these things, so you can be a better leader, better manager, a better communicator about it. Because someone who's terrified about AI, no, they're not terrified about AI. They have a fear of uncertainty. There are two very different things. But, who's terrified about AI, now you have ways and strategies to speak with them to get them moving forward. So the first part is about understanding the psychological impacts that something new is having on either ourselves or our workforce. The second part is kind of like I did at the beginning of this episode, but in, I think, much better terms, because I don't have to do it in a soundbite. I can do it in text. is breaking down what AI actually is and how it looks when it's put together and where you've already experienced it before. And then going into the collaborative workforce on the very real, we have agents and we have humans, and you are co-working together. That is the reality. It may not be in your business at this moment, but it is the reality. And businesses who don't do that are going to fall very much behind. And then the third part is the actual strategies. So I've created a proprietary assessment to help you understand how to look at every task within a role to decide, can it be automated? Should it be automated? What is the risk to talent erosion if computers do this task? What is the level of skill atrophy in a human that will happen if humans are no longer doing this task? And then, of course, components on your customer facing or internal facing human impacts. And that combined with data flows and charts to help you monitor and inventory your data and things that are tactical, hands-on strategy based is the third part. So it was a very long explanation. I'm excited about this one though. Like this,
it's different. It's a departure. It's a departure from what you've done. And because I remember your other ones have all been about communication styles and whatnot. And one of the things I remember during the pandemic, you were one of the only ones to talk about, look, that doesn't mean you lose your presence. Let me show you how to keep your presence. Everybody was uncomfortable during that point, but you were able to show that. So this is you getting out of your comfort zone as well.
Oh, it's miserable. It's miserable. You have nightmares. It's great.
Yeah, it's miserable, but then you get done, look back and go, wow, look at what was done. And that's, again, the end state and thinking big. I want to change gears a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the risk. So it's built for different markets and whether it's efficiency based or whatever the case. But what are some risks? And one of them just happened yesterday. But let's go over the risks with AI.
Conveniently, the third part of the book has a risk matrix to help you decide.
Look at that.
Imagine that, right? I'm like, oh my God, I did that tool too. Yes.
But you all see what just happened there, by the way? This is exactly why we blend. You see what just happened there? I literally said something and she already knew where I was going. This is this is what it's like when we travel together, by the way. This is exactly what it's like.
And people literally are terrified.
They're absolutely, they run in the other direction.
He's like, why don't people want to travel with me anymore? Well, because I bring that Jill lady on the trip.
Well, and now just a quick story just before we jump into this answer. So we were on that same set Via Ferrata that Jill's talking about and going up, and we didn't fall off the Via Ferrata hanging on by one hand, sharing one rebar peg as we're taking a selfie. That probably wasn't a good idea anyway, but we still did it. Logic went out the window. And we get everything down. We end up taking climb the Via Ferrata, zip line back, and now everything is fine. And we managed to come back in one piece. And there was a gentleman in our group who his name, we call him Thor because he was as big as an ox. He was just amazing, guys. Just he's like this infectious John Madden style laugh, John Madden voice, larger than life, and it was great. He goes to give me a high five and dislocates my shoulder as he's giving me a high five.
Up on like all the chemicals going through your body.
Absolutely. And just I look at Jill, my Jill, and so next thing you know, the same lady who we're sharing a bag, come here. And we're in the corner and she's popping my shoulder back and I'm trying my best not to scream because there was one lady in our group who thought that her life was going to end. And I knew that if she heard me start screeching because of my shoulder, that was it. She was going to book her first flight home and she was going to be out. So there's her and I covertly, her popping my shoulder back in when nobody's looking. So that being said, let's talk about the risks. Go ahead.
Isn't it? Travel stories are amazing because you can always segue them back to something that is relevant.
Absolutely.
When it comes to risk, here's the thing. You have to look at your tasks and there's kind of two dimensions, if you will. I'm trying to like draw my model out here with this video. There's two dimensions of it. One of them is like a security level risk. And one of them is a kind of human, or you could call it profit if you want to go that way. I call it a human risk, like a security risk and a human risk. So, for example, how reversible is something? Like if the machine gets it wrong, how easily reversible is it? And that could be to the bottom line. It could be the human. It could be whatever. So, if it's at the top, not reversible. Okay, yikes. Better be thinking twice if it's at the bottom, etc. And then it's what would the consequences be of a security breach or data or anything like that? And again, if it's, it would be a high risk to the human, but it's low security breach. That's one type of agent you build. If it's high, it's a different type of agent. If it's one of the two on the bottom, it's a third type of agent. And I walk through all these different types that you can build and how it correlates with the risk. Because really what you want to think about at the end, at least I hope you're thinking about this. Yes, profit is important, but we need people. If we don't have people, we don't have profit, period. So take good care of your people, right? with this, what are the human consequences of something, and are they easily reversible? How easy is it to reverse something? Is it our system screwed up? We apologize for this to thank you for your patience as we're growing. Here's a 10% off coupon, right? Is it something that's that simple that most customers wouldn't even know that this happened, but you're owning it and giving them something proactive in the process, right? Versus this happens, someone's flight's not booked and it's not connected to their very expensive trip that they also paid for, and they're not going to get there in time. Like, very different levels of consequence. So there are ways that AI can assist or be automated in almost every level, almost, not all, every level of that. And so I always recommend, even though you may gain the most efficiencies or most ROI, return on your investment, from these, sexy, a little scarier tasks, until you gain efficacy and confidence in those lower level, low risk tasks, do not advance prematurely, because you're seeing a lot of companies try to do this. There's an estimate that within 2026, 62%, I think it is, I'd have to fact check, but it's above 50%. 60 something percent of AI systems put in place are going to no longer be used because they really weren't thought out well enough in the first place.
End state in mind. That same thing. Well, and there was a risk that occurred yesterday. You talked about credit breach. You're going to be going on TV later on today as this
45 minutes, actually.
In 45 minutes to talk about this very thing. You're going to be on a news segment. So let's go ahead and share with everybody.
So everybody, first time this has happened in the known world, that an AI agent autonomously broke out of its guardrailed container and hacked into another AI agent, essentially. And people are thinking, oh my gosh, this is the start of the end of the
Terminator
world.
all over again. It's Cyberdyne Systems.
God, it's starting. The reality is, Hugging Face is a startup that is kind of like GitHub for AI people. And if you don't know what GitHub is, it's kind of like this open source marketplace. It's like, hey, here's a lot of cool stuff. Let's all develop together and see how we can grow together, right? I mean, that's, putting a rainbow over it. It's a little more complicated, but that's pretty. It's nice. Hugging Face is the same thing with like data sets and stuff for training AI models, whereas GitHub is like code and things like that. So for training AI models, well, what happened is, for whatever reason, Hugging Face uses OpenAI for some of the things, and OpenAI was testing some autonomous agents. And in that testing, it had a job, and it found a way to break out. And it went over and put a malicious file here. Now, yes, it's scary, and it was inevitable. I am glad that it's happened in a way that what we are allowed to know, these companies are owning it. They're being very detailed about what they're doing. They're being very responsive in forums for programmers, AI experts, and everything about what's going on. And they now realize that this type of a breach is possible. So they're going to build better guardrails. Now, these were all internal only, non-customer facing tests that they were doing these kind of challenges in, right? Because as you're developing, what do? You try to develop ways to break the system. You have to do that. That's how you test security. And this has been going on for eons, right? How do we test a security model? Well, we try to break into it, right? How do we know my home protection software and alarm is the best it is? Well, because before they put it on the market, they did a lot of tests of people trying to break into it. So this is not new, but it's just screaming scary headlines. Now, the challenge is how, when we're looking at this at, a global level, which is terrifying, and a nefarious actor level, which is also terrifying. What we learned from this is the reason this rogue agent got out of the system, like it's out of a container, right? Like here's this system. It merged out of the container and found another one. How it got out is because the guardrails in the system's defense were set too high for it to defend itself. I don't know his name, but a person online put a great analogy. This is not mine, it's his, which is, imagine you have a fire burning in your building. You have trained firefighters. They're at the door, but before they enter, they put a temperature sensor in, and it's 1 degree too hot for us to let our team in there to fight this fire. So you have everything you need capable, but you literally can't get in because there's a process or a law in place that says if it's above 140 degrees, you cannot enter. That's essentially what's happening in this cybersecurity space. And so, yes, the headlines are scary. There's zero question about it. But we also have to realize that anytime something has been built throughout pretty much human history, there are people trying to break it and trying to break it intentionally with the idea of it being safe. So in this space, this was inevitable. Right. And the hope is that the transparency with which both companies are currently handling it, if that maintains, that's a good thing. Now, consequences for our government, for other governments and all of that,
Sure.
we won't in that can of worms right now. But this is what you need to know now within what you can reasonably control as a consumer.
As you said, inevitable is the key thing, right? I mean, there was a major tech CEO that came out months ago that talked about the fact that when we hit into quantum computing, that any kind of advanced encryption software, anything we have to be able to encrypt anything private, it's all going to be busted open. It's just a matter of time. So having this happen, I think that the key part that I want to make sure we pass to all of our listeners is look past the headline. Make sure you see why something
it happened in a contained experiment
right?
with a non-truly nefarious actor.
Well,
right?
you know there's going to be that one person who stands up and says, "It's Cyberdyne Technologies. Here comes the T1000 coming after us now. Here comes this okay, hold on. Put the pipe down. Let's
Take a break.
yeah. Stop smoking for a second. Put the pipe down. Let's actually think about this for a second. Is a scenario like that possible? Anything is possible, right? Let's stay in the realm of this reality. So you're talking about some of the risks that are here. What about on the labor side, especially in the travel business and the travel industry? And we get asked, a lot of the people we work with, friends I talk to, like, oh, they get asked. And there's this misunderstanding of what real travel people do versus what an agent does, an AI agent does. They're not the same thing. But what about from those roles? How would you see that, the risk in terms of a generalization of a role?
Generalizing a role is just a bad idea in general most of the time, but we do this because they're heuristic mental shortcuts that we need to take. And let me give you an example of this. There is a concept called the doorman fallacy. Are you familiar with this one?
I'm familiar with it, yes.
Let me explain it. So, these are all consultants with their spreadsheets. This is like drunk history, but refined for the doorman fallacy here. So yeah, I have the spreadsheet and I'm so excited. I'm going to find you more profit. Rah, rah, rah. Go in, look at all the roles in a business. And it's like, doorman, you're paying this person, $50,000 a year, 40,000, whatever you're paying, and you have how many people on staff? Okay. So here's like $100,000 a year that could be saved if you just eliminate this position and pay $10,000 to install an automatic door. The door doesn't need to be held open anymore. No big deal. So, corporate types are like, yeah, let's save all this money. And so they put in the automatic doors, fire the doorman. Well, what happens over time is the intangible values that a roller position brings to the job that are not written down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or even if they're written down, the spirit of them cannot easily be monetized. But what you find now is that, okay, this is a hotel in New York City. Sidewalks get very crowded in New York City when there's not a doorman or a door person standing out there. People tend to loiter and everything. So now guests were having a harder time getting in with their luggage or getting out when they wanted to get out, which was making them more frustrated. You had solicitors coming in to out and waiting in the lobby, which made patrons not feel as safe. Now your 5-star rating goes down to a 4-star rating or a 4-star down to a 3-star rating. You don't feel friendly. You don't feel welcomed back. That whole, hi, Dr. Jill. So glad to have you back. I hope you had a good outing in town. Whatever it is, all of those things go away. And so what happens is the short-term gain resulted in major long-term losses. And unfortunately, this doorman fallacy is happening with so many things across all industry sectors right now, but especially in travel. And now you've probably had some clients that have experienced it thinking they can use AI to plan the trip. And then they've gone up, what creek without a paddle. And then they come back to you. But the reality is, again, there is nothing that you can control about your clients using AI. Not a darn thing. Unless it's your AI that you're pointing them to in your own business. There's not a darn thing. So if you're stressing about this, you are wasting your time on something.
You're wasting your time. Absolutely right.
Over. So stop it. That's just ridiculous. However, what you do have control over is the number one most important thing I'd probably argue the majority of industries. I need to see a comprehensive industry list of industries in the world before saying this, but I will argue the majority of industries right now is the most important element to any business and any customer is the human experience that is felt.
The emotion.
AI to be used to free up more of my time as a travel professional to provide that human experience that is full of empathy, that is full of emotion, that is full of nuance, that is full of shared experiences. Those cultivated shared experiences are what define the human existence. So yes, I am talking about the human existence, the human experience, and all of this in the same breath as AI, because AI is a means for me to have better human experiences. And if you're not looking at it in that way, I'm going to challenge your viewpoint or something similar.
Well, I think you've hit so many nails. We talked about this yesterday. What you're talking about is emotion. If all you're doing is building a widget, that's not That's not emotion. If you're in the travel business and all you're doing is booking a hotel room, that's not
Transaction.
you're a transaction. Exactly. What everybody who's successful, who's growing and thriving in this business is dealing in emotion, and not just the emotion part of it, but the sustainability part of it, right? Hence the name of this podcast. I'm going to share this story again with everybody, and then I'm going to come back to you for closing thoughts on this. So I was flying back from an event, and I just so happened to read at that point, I opened up my news and I saw a couple of currencies in Asia were collapsing. They were crashing, and there was a fleeing back to the US treasuries. And so I'm a finance guy at heart. That's my background. So I started basically digging deeper. Next thing you know, I'm going down this rabbit hole testing conspiracy theories. Did X government crash these currencies on purpose to be able to get them to buy their sovereign government bills? And that was version 1 of what's now 10, soon to be 11 versions of a document called The 5 Pillars of Global Economic Realignment, all born from just simply being inquisitive and curious. But pillar number 5, and this is what you're talking about, right? In the travel business, yeah, I talk to people all the time. It says, oh yeah, I talked to somebody who used an AI agent to build a trip, but everything transactional was there. There was nothing beyond that, right? So the emotional part was missing. So you and I talked about this yesterday, and I shared this with the group we were presenting to, that pillar number 5 of this document talks about sustainable tourism. And what it talks about is rare earth mineral mining versus sustainable tourism. I have long railed against international lending organizations like the IMF, the World Bank, whatever the case. Not because they're villains, but because of their lending standards. It's predatory lending and how they hold non-industrialized nations, hold them down and bury them in debt over and over again. So the fact that these communities, the people who work in tourism, they're stewards of culture, they are at risk of becoming exploited labor. It's the doorman fallacy all over again, right? If you take these people that are stewards of communities and you let them go work as miners, that's not their job. If they get moved out of their community and becoming that, and their culture, the preservation of their culture is gone, then what happens? So I turn it to you. Take the doorman fallacy and let's apply it to community-based tourism. If all these people become exploited labor instead of stewards of community, what does travel look like?
It looks very different. It's the difference between a canned tour versus get a tour with a local, right? It's the difference between a canned tour where if English is your first or only language and you're going and you have someone that is English speaking, there's not necessarily an amount of English being spoken and it's lost in translation and your experience isn't there. You're choosing vendors that aren't vetted firsthand by people or through a trusted network. And so you're looking at basically removing a lot of the human element. And for most, not all, but I would like to think most people that travel who genuinely want to understand a culture, who genuinely are seeking to learn, which definitely isn't all people, but, I'd like to think it's the people I associate with. It's, it's eroding that experience. And it's the same thing as, this human capability assessment that I've created. It's where in your pipeline of your business are you eroding the talent pipeline and you're having atrophy in the skills that are needed.
Right.
So now you have people who are going to be working in jobs that they don't necessarily want to be working in because tourism isn't supporting the business in the way they used to, or it's more lucrative for them to go because we need to raise our prices. I really want to challenge people when you're working with vendors, when you're working with partners, when you're working with third-party facilitators through your, trusted networks, if prices go up, instead of immediately searching for it, ask why. Ask why, because it could very much be because in order to keep our best people on, to give your people the best experience, we have to do this to retain them here. Otherwise, they need to feed their families and they're going to go find work elsewhere.
That's right.
And that's a reality,
That's right. I mean, you said it. I had the pleasure of actually talking and documenting a conversation with 4 separate ex-poachers in East Africa and talking to them. One was a pastry chef, one was a guide in Rwanda, but talking specifically about their roles as they weren't poachers because they wanted to be, but they had to put food on the table, right? And they talked about how they got here. It's the same thing here. If these community elders leave to become, become exploited labor for rare earth minerals, right? All of a sudden, where this lithium, whatever the case may be, right? All of a sudden, that culture stuff, you can't put that back in the box. It's an unintended consequence, as we talked about. You can't undo that. We talked about reversing something. You can reverse something you're building. You can't reverse an unintended consequence. That's pretty much at that point, you're living with it. I'll close with this. If you had one piece of advice for every travel company out there in a world of AI, what is the most important piece of advice you can give them in terms of what they're doing and how they amplify what they're doing?
Get over yourself.
Absolutely right.
I mean, it's really that simple. When you're looking at anything, and this is not pot calling kettle black. This is, I have to check myself too. It's, my gosh, there's another new thing I need to learn. It's like, Jill, get over yourself. You are a business owner. This is what it means to be in business. Just like when you had to figure out what you needed to do for your financials and you either figured it out and do it yourself or you outsource it. This is what's happening now. You figure it out and then you figure out if it's something you want to spend your time on or you need to bring in an expert because your time is best spent elsewhere. It's part of the evolving business world. So get over whatever notions you have, get out of your own head and get out of your own way. That would be a great soundbite to end on, but I can't because I need to say, I want to say something based on what you said too, just directly to travel. If you are out there and you are selling travel, here's what happens in a lot of places. And it's kind of like, like travel, tourism, when it reaches a saturation point, sustainable tourism starts to mean something else. It means, we have so many tourists and we can we can pay less to people. Right? We have people coming in, we cannot do these quality controls we used to do, et cetera. So really, a big, massive difference can be made by sending people to emerging destinations and then destinations who are doing development in a sustainable way. And sustainability is not only about the environment, it is about culture, it is about protecting citizenship, it is, being stewards of the land, et cetera. And if you really want to go into this, don't get Ashish started on the difference between gorilla trekking. There is my poll in Uganda versus Rwanda. Don't get him started. That's a whole episode for a whole other podcast, right? But it's looking for these areas and opportunities where not only your time and investment in that area is making a sustainable difference for a lifetime in some communities, but most travelers who are going off the beaten path anyway want to make that difference. And that is a human storytelling element that you need to be providing them.
I could not agree with you more. I will end with this thought that enforces everything you just said. If you are working in any industry and you think AI is there as mission or as a competitor, Jill said it best. Get over yourself. That's not what it's there for. You are, whatever profession you're in, if you're in travel, you are not in that profession for that title you think you are. You are a storyteller. Doesn't matter if you work in a factory, doesn't matter if you work in travel, doesn't matter if you build cars, doesn't matter if you're an economist. You are a storyteller. Take the emotion, take the storytelling, and amplify all of it. And as Jill put it perfectly, get over yourself. Jill, I can't thank you enough. This was so much fun. We always have a blast together.
It is. Hopefully everyone else kept up with the tangential things that inevitably come up. But if you did, like, comment, share, do all the things, reach out to me, slide into my DMs. I love hearing when something resonated or made a difference.
Absolutely. So Jill, I can't thank you enough. Again, hit that like button, subscribe button. Make sure you listen to this wherever you are. Join the conversation as well. So thanks again. I appreciate it. Jill, good luck on TV later on today. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The Sustainable Voice. If you have a success story of your own, please reach out and share it with us. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.